Texas Libertarian presidential debate in Fort Worth, Texas.
Woohoo!
I'm John Spivey, and I'm with the Tarrant County Libertarian Party, and I'm a member of the State Libertarian Executive Committee of Texas. And I'd like to start this off by recognizing a few people before we get going. Now, first of all, prior to this meeting, we had another meeting of the State Libertarian Executive Committee of Texas, or SELECT, as we call them, because they're such a select group of individuals. They met, and this governing body is the group that keeps the wheels on the tracks for our state party. If you're with SELECT, could you raise your hand? Let's thank them for their service. Secondly, I'd like to ask the members of the Tarrant County Libertarian Party Executive Committee, if you're on the TCL, PEC, or Tickle Peck, as we call it, would you please stand or wave to us? Woohoo! We certainly want to thank you for making this event. Apparently, it's such a great success, so thank you very much. Now, I'd also like to recognize a few people that are always working hard to grow the Libertarian Party of Texas. Our chair, Pat Dixon.
Woohoo!
Heather, are you around here somewhere? There you are, in the back. Director, and if you're interested in learning more about joining the Libertarian Party of Texas, or even donating, you can see one of these two people, and I'd love that. I know that they'd love to talk to you after the debate. Obviously, this could not have happened without the generous contributions of those who truly value liberty, and to those that contributed and made donations for this event. Thank you very much. I'd also like to invite everybody. You can see we have some tables for the candidates and for some affiliated organizations that also have a love of liberty too. Please visit with them after this debate and talk to them about ways that working together you can help preserve our freedoms. Lastly, we need to do this ourselves. If you have a mobile phone, an iPhone, iPad, whatever might make a noise, a BlackBerry, please turn it off. Don't be the person that disrupts our debate. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Sharon Harris. Sharon is president of the Advocates for Self-Government. It's a nonprofit educational organization founded in 1985, which specializes in libertarian communication and outreach. If you've ever taken the world's smallest political quiz to determine where you guys sit on the Nolan chart, you have her and her organization to thank for that. Sharon has been active in the libertarian movement since the early 70s. In 1972, she was a founding member of the Libertarian Party of Georgia, the LPGA, not the Ladies Professional Golf Association. In 1972, as a 9-year-old, founded the organization. Okay, 5. In 1988, she was a campaign manager for the LPGA's 3 Public Service Commission candidates, an historic campaign that won permanent statewide ballot access for the party. This is in 1994, she was one of the plaintiffs in a landmark lawsuit against the state of Georgia, which challenged the constitutionality of Georgia's law, which required candidates for office take a drug test. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they won the case, overthrowing that law. So, Sharon is a writer, the author of The Invisible Hand is a Gentle Hand, a work which demonstrates the beauty of a truly libertarian society. As the Advocates President, she's a publisher of the email newsletter Liberator Online, which has readers in 100 different countries. And remember the Advocates for Self-Government, which a great organization. They do make the world's smallest political quiz, like I mentioned, Operation Politically Homeless, which is an invaluable tool for local grassroots activists, and sponsor the Lights of Liberty Awards for libertarian activism. So everybody, please welcome the great Sharon Harris.
fun. I think you're going to really enjoy this. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what my goals are for this. My goals are for you to get to know these 6 people who are running for your nomination for president. The first part of the questions will be designed for them to appeal to delegates for the National Convention who are going to be voting on who will be the nominee for the Libertarian Party. So you will get an idea of why you should vote for them and why you should have them as your candidate. The second part of it will show you what they will be like if they are your candidate. And that will give them a chance to answer the questions on all the major issues of the day. And we're going to try to cover as many as we can. I hope we will cover the one that means the most to you. And so without any further ado, I want to introduce our candidates. I figured that after recently hearing so much from the vivacious Mitt Romney and Ricky Saint-Torium, that it's about time you heard some really good candidates. So I want to welcome them on stage now. Please help me welcome them. And if you wonder about the order, we drew from a hat, and so this is sort of random, so don't try to figure, is this alphabetical order or what? It's just random. But I would like to introduce our candidates and have you welcome them, please. Please welcome from Virginia, Bill Still. And from the Republic of Texas, Arlie Rice. And hailing from Colorado, Scott Keller. People from all over the country coming to talk to you tonight. And from New Mexico, Governor Gary Johnson. From New York, Carl Pearson. And from Oklahoma, R.J. Harris. We will begin the debate by allowing each gentleman to give a 3-minute opening statement of their choice. So we will begin with Mr. Harris.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for that warm welcome to Longhorn State. Just from the applause alone, I think Lee's in hometown territory here. So good for him. But thank you so much for having us all out here today. I appreciate you very much. My name is R.J. Harris. I'm running for President of the United States. And the reason I'm running is to restore freedom, liberty, the Constitution, and the Republic. And to do those things, what I intend to do as President is to end this country's policy of foreign interventionism, number one. And I don't leave any back doors open for that. I don't subscribe to things that are going to be posed to our candidates later on about, well, what about humanitarian wars and the like? I don't subscribe to any of that. I look to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which allows us to nominate and support privateers through letters of marque. So that way individual citizens can engage in the issues that are on their conscience internationally. I intend to end the civil war on our citizens known as the war on drugs. I intend to restore a sound monetary policy, value-backed currency, and end first audit and then end the Federal Reserve System. As your president, I will also, go through the Department of Justice and use the Department of Justice to begin looking inwardly at our government and not outwardly towards we the people as another measure to try to restore our individual liberty and our freedom. Also, I will end what we've all seen going on at Gitmo, and I will close down Gitmo because I think that it's a stain upon our nation's honor. I think that most people out there can see, especially the folks here in this room, that there's an unbroken chain between what began at Gitmo and with things like the Patriot Act to assassinating American citizens and or holding them without due process or equal protection that is now being allowed through the NDAA and was just recently voted through our Congress. As your president, I will end that. So there's a lot of things on the agenda. I also think that as libertarians, we need to lead the way. We need to lead by example, which means that if we're going to be arguing for an end to this, to our addiction to deficit spending, that we need to lead the way and say, okay, well, we're going to run our campaigns in the black, and we're not going to get in line with the Republicans and Democrats for some type of federal funds for our campaigns or for our party. That's not upon the citizens of this republic to fund our party operations or to have money taken from their taxes to pay for our campaigns. We need to get out there and spread the message of liberty. We need to win over those voters with our messages. And so I'm asking for all of y'all's support today. I would like to ask you, I don't know if there's a straw poll today, but if there is, please vote for me. And thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
Mr. Carl Pearson.
Hi, my name is Carl Pearson, and I'm a high school dropout. My first business was at 9 years old as a newspaper delivery boy in North Platte, Nebraska. I'm here because I believe that the Libertarian Party actually can be the majority party in the United States, and I'd like to tell you how this can happen. I don't think it's going to happen if we don't have something positive to offer to voters. I think we need to offer more than libertarian principles. We have to offer libertarian principles that are applied so that the people, the voters, can see what it is that we're offering. We have to show them what we can do for them. So here's the game plan as I see it. That one of the game plans is that I've set up a domain name which will have a website, occupydebates2012.com. And you can imagine what kind of activity I'm going to create, trying to get into the debates between the Republicans and Democrats, but knowing that I won't be allowed, but outside I'll be answering the same questions and giving the public the real information that they need. So I think that will be one hell of a way that we can get a lot of votes doing that. That's a unique way, I believe, we can do it. But here's really what we need to do. We need to create jobs and show the public how we can create jobs. My program, the first 3 are free, is to have the IRS declare the first 3 employees of any employer free of all regulation, treated as independent contractors, and that would mean the nation's 20 million small business people, self-employed, would for the first time start hiring, and we can truly expect 20 million people to be hired as number 2 in a 2-man business. 2-woman, 2-man business. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's very valuable, and we can create jobs that way. My idea that I've been pushing now for months of having the U.S. government allow the small business to raise capital without regulation has just been enacted by Congress. I'm amazed that I'm the only one urging this, and suddenly it's happened. As I see it, the Senate passed it. I think the House of Representatives have passed it. And therefore, what I'm doing has been effective in that respect. We need to deregulate education. That's the bane of our existence because we don't have the right as small business to train people the way we need them to operate for us. So we need to deregulate it to allow small business to set up the training programs, and we can train people to fill the jobs for small business that'll be worth $1,000 to $2,000 a week. So these are some of the things that I offer. Please vote for me when you have a chance. Thank you.
Gary Johnson.
I'm an athlete. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I was a 2-term governor of New Mexico. Arguably, I was the Libertarian governor of New Mexico for 2 terms under the guise of being Republican. How did that work out? I got to tell you that right now, people in New Mexico wave at me with all 5 fingers, not just 1. Bad news. The country's in trouble. I think the dollar's going to collapse. I think we need strong U.S. dollar policies. The good news is we can fix this. We fix this by slashing spending and stop printing money. I'm making 3 promises as President of the United States. One is, I promised to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I promised to veto any expenditures, any bills where expenditures exceed revenue. And did I mention that as governor of New Mexico, I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined? I vetoed 750 bills while I was governor of New Mexico. I'm also promising to advocate on the part of the fair tax. I think it ends corporatism. I think it ends crony capitalism. It's ending the income tax. It's ending the corporate tax. It's abolishing the IRS. I believe in the power of the individual. I believe in marriage equality. I think it is constitutionally guaranteed equality. We need to stop torture and detainment without charge. I oppose the death penalty. I. Aren't all these things constitutionally mandated? I fundamentally support a woman's right to choose. There isn't anything that I want to see the government fix when it comes to the internet. I support the abolishment of the Department of Education, Housing and Urban Development. I'm open to the discussion of shutting down, abolishing any federal agency. Let's not build a fence across the border. Let's make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. I support a strong national defense, not offense, not nation building, not foreign aid. And let's extricate ourselves immediately from all of our current military conflicts. Let's stop the prohibition of drugs. I believe in free markets. That means no tariffs. I'd like to see the Department of Homeland Security abolished. That means no TSA. I would like to repeal the Patriot Act. I think there's two sides to being a libertarian. One is civil liberties. The other is balancing the checkbook. About 3 months ago, the ACLU came out with a report card on all the presidential candidates. 24 was a perfect score. Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum, 0 out of 24. Newt Gingrich, 4 out of 24. President Obama, 16 out of 24. Ron Paul, 18 out of 24. Gary Johnson, 21 out of 24. I would love to see your vote. I think I've got the fiscal side of this. I think I've got the civil liberties side of this.
Mr. Scott Keller.
As you just heard, my name is Scott Keller. I am from Colorado. My family lives in Florida right now, in Tampa. They have not come out. It is because I started working over in Denver. But what makes us all different here? You're going to hear a lot of the same basic tenets: ending war, maximizing liberty, reducing the size of the federal government, getting the federal government out of our pockets. So what is it that will distinguish any of us from any of the other ones? And is it even all that much of a necessity to distinguish? I think in the end, what needs to happen is whoever gets nominated as the Libertarian Party candidate, they do what the Libertarian Party members want them to do, whatever that is. Now, we all tend to believe in the libertarian tenets. Now, my personal standout thing, I believe, is that I focus on the fundamentals. And as Carl was saying a little while ago, I think that we need to focus on, as a party, a way of bridging the distance between where we are right now and where the Republicans and the Democrats are right now. I think that we could be the #1 party rather than a third party. And I believe that to do that, we need to come up with some solutions, libertarian-based solutions, government-free solutions. And we need to understand the fundamentals of the issues, the root causes of the issues that we're facing. Now, one of my primary issues that I love to focus on is the economy, because so many people just don't seem to understand what the root issues are revolving the economy. The Federal Reserve, the negative trade balance that we've had since 1976. How are we ever going to get out of debt if we're not understanding what the root causes of the debt happens to be? Now, government spending, that's a very big deal. It's a bad thing. We shouldn't be spending so much as a federal government. We need to decentralize a lot of that. But it is not the root cause of the federal debt, the national debt. It is not the root cause of why so many people are out of jobs. It's not the federal government's job to regulate those things or to create jobs. Local, local, local. I say that all the time. Local. We can resolve most of the issues that we're facing on a local basis. It is not that hard to do. If we fix the economic model that we're working under, we return to a sovereign currency, we get our trade balance working, and all of us work together to resolve the issues and to put ourselves forward as a party that has solutions to these issues, then I believe that we will fill the gap that the people of America are looking for. They are looking for solutions, and we can provide them. Thank you.
Mr. R.Lee Rice.
Well, I've only said this once before at any other forum we've been to, but I'm going to say it today. Wow. I come to Fort Worth for a debate, and I stand before a larger crowd than any state convention we've been to yet. This is a testament to what libertarians can do. We're all seeking the top of the ticket, presidential nomination. It's going to go away in November. And there's 4 more years and you choose another. The people that did this, the people that put things like this together don't go away. That's why we have things like this. That's why we're able to do these things. You deserve a great deal of credit. Alan, John, thank you very much for this event. I'm running for president so I can leave you alone. It's that simple. One of the gifts of being this deep into the lineup, if you will, is I can say, I want to do all the things these guys said. They already said it for me, so I'll use my words for something else. I will entertain for just a moment the fantasy that I will be president. That's right. All of you voted for me, and you told all your friends, and they told all their friends, and I'm president. As soon as my hand leaves the Bible, the first thing I'm going to do is declare peace. Tell the world and tell our fellow Americans we are not at war. Because wars don't work. That's what we've learned from all these wars we do. And I'm not just talking about the foreign interventions that we're involved in. Let's just look at the wars we have here at home. 1960s came along. President Johnson from the great state of Texas decided we had to have a great society. We have a war on poverty. No more poor people. It's going to be great. And we still got poor people. Jimmy Carter come along. He told us, we know how hard it is for you to educate your children. We feel your pain. So we're going to help you. He created the Federal Bureau of Education, been turning out functional illiterates ever since. And the greatest disaster that has ever come upon the American people, the drug war, even the people perpetrating the drug war admitting it is a failure. What we learned is we're a failure. So I'll declare peace. I ask all of you to join me in saying, I am not at war. Because there are enough of us say it, we haven't.
Mr. Bill Still.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back in Texas, and the benefit about going last is I'll use my words for something else, and I agree with most of everything that's been said. But there are some notable exceptions, and I think that will come out as we talk. Your vocabulary word of the day is paraprodokians. These are sentences which have a surprise ending. Winston Churchill loved them. So here are 5 libertarian paraprodokians. Number 1, the last thing I want to do is hurt you, but it's still on my list. Number 2, war does not determine who is right, only who is left. Number 3, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in the garage makes you a car. Maybe that's not a good one for Easter. Maybe that should. Number 4, do not argue with an idiot. He'll drag you down to his level and beat you with experience. And number 5, women will never be equal to men until they can walk down the street with a bald head and a beer gut and still think they're sexy. So much for the humor aspect of this presentation. Some of you may not know much about me. I started out as a newspaper editor in the late 70s, early 80s. Got onto the missing Fort Knox gold story in 1980, and finally sold it to the History Channel, and that ran last February. In 1995, I produced The Money Masters, which is consistently in the top 25 documentaries of all time, with 40 million views on the internet alone. My latest film, The Secret of Oz, which I have a few of them back there for sale, won Best Documentary of 2010. It's on the monetary reform issue. That's my main area of expertise. My latest book is called No More National Debt. I'll be speaking in Malaysia later this year at their annual conference on usury, so I'm very well known in this field. The reason I'm trying to build this up is because I want you to believe what I'm about to tell you. It's really important. If you don't know anything else about me, if you don't listen to anything else I have to say, please listen to this. Within the last few months, the central banks of China, Japan, the Bank of England, and the European Central Bank have flooded all their markets with trillions of dollars of hot money. This is pure money printing. This is a coordinated strategy, in my opinion, designed to temporarily lift all stock markets. Why? To re-elect Barack Obama. News item last week. A company called AKT announced their biggest ammunition order ever, a whopping 450 million rounds of .40 caliber ammo. The customer? The Department of Homeland Security. They don't have any cops. They don't have any police. They don't have a military. Why? Then there's the NDAA bill, and damn few in Congress seem anxious to do anything about it. Then last month, Obama issued new executive orders allowing the president to seize just about anything in the country if he felt it was necessary. I think something bad is coming, a worldwide financial collapse, and the solution that will be offered is an international gold-backed money that will effectively bring national sovereignty to an end, and that will crush humankind's 1,000-year quest for freedom and return us to a state of perpetual serfdom. Mark my words, freedom is at stake.
Okay, just a couple of quick announcements. One is we do welcome reactions from the audience. Sometimes in debates you're asked to remain silent or something. I'm more than glad for you to applaud or laugh or whatever. When you hear something you like, let the candidates know, because I think that's a really good idea. Also like to ask the candidates to please stay within the time frame so we can get all the questions answered. That would be really good. We're going to start this next round. The next rounds are going to be 1 minute each, and so you have to talk fast. We're going to begin this one with Mr. Carl Pearson. And what I would like to ask you is this: if you would tell the Libertarian delegates what are your goals for the campaign? If you receive the nomination for the Libertarian Party, would you tell me what your goals are for the campaign? And even if you don't win the presidency, what would be you consider a successful campaign for the Libertarian Party?
Well, the goals for me are really to win the nomination and therefore be able to win the election. The public is waiting for an answer. We can create jobs, we can restore people to their homes. All of this with libertarian principles. They're on my website. You ought to look at my website. I have a lot of videos on them, professionally done. But the public is waiting and wants to have somebody to save them from the Republicans and the Democrats. Whoever we nominate is going to be the person they will look at, and if that is the right person, then you can expect the vote, and we can actually become the dominant party in the country.
Mr. Gary Johnson.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was possible to win. And here's how here's how that possibility occurs. It's polling at 15% against Obama and Romney, believing Romney will be the nominee, and being on the national debate stage with the two of them. Given the fact now that 82% of Americans are saying they would consider voting for a third-party candidate, there is that real possibility. On a lesser level, if the Libertarian candidate for president gets 5% of the general election vote, something that has never happened before, the Libertarian Party will receive $90 million in federal matching funds. Now, I'll be the first one to stand up and say no to federal matching funds for all parties, but this is how the system has been gamed. And don't for a second think that that isn't going to be a game changer. $90 million in the 2016 election could bring Libertarians to the point of second party, not third party.
Here, here.
Scott Keller.
I believe that the answer to this question is what I said in the introduction, is that we need to, as a party, become the party of libertarian solutions, government-free solutions. We need to show the Democrats and the Republicans that are tired of their candidates how we can give them what they want from a libertarian perspective, without the government, without overreaching with the federal laws, federal regulations, and all these things. We can solve the job issue on a local level, through the private sector, through nonprofits, through local co-ops, through local currencies. There are a lot of things that we can do on a local basis in a libertarian fashion. So what I would want to do for the Libertarian Party is to present the Libertarian Party as a party of solutions rather than just a third-party fringe candidate, fringe kind of a party, and then lots of things that we can do.
Mr. Lee Wright.
Well, the goal of my campaign, should I receive the nomination of the Libertarian Party, would be to occupy the White House. Have a party, invite all of you over. Start about changing this country the way it needs to be changed. Fill up cabinet positions with real libertarians, with real solutions, true choices. The goal of my campaign is to show America a true libertarian message that nobody has to be ashamed of, that nobody has to soften or massage or shape. There's nothing wrong with our message. We have a wonderful message. Peace and prosperity for every human being on the face of the earth. What could be better than that? Yes, I want to present a solid, sane, libertarian message to the American people. And I hope that you'll give me that opportunity.
Mr. Bill Still.
Well, to me, in order to regain prosperity here in this country, you have to reinforce the rule of law amongst the financial community. The rule of law is totally out the window. I say we've got to stop the looting and start prosecuting. We've got to start putting people in jail. And what I do on day one is I call for the indictment of the people who have made the most money illegally off of this, who are normally completely untouchable. Secondly, I'd close the IRS day one and initiate a consumption tax. Carl Denninger, my chief economic advisor, and I have calculated that by cutting necessary programs and agencies, we can do that with an 18.8% consumption tax, whereas the fair tax, I think, is 23%. Third, we have to take back the money power. We have to understand what that means. Every dollar in our pocket, every dollar in our bank account is not printed. It's created as an interest-bearing debt. We've got to turn that around. We've got to restore the money power to we the people.
What would your goals for your campaign be, Mr. R.J. Harrison?
Well, the number one goal is to win. And the way that we do that, and I think that we can do that, that is possible, and the way that we do that is by nominating a candidate who will appeal to this awakening body politic that Ron Paul's been waking up for the last many years and many decades now, and appeal to them with a candidate who is correct on the message and isn't just the candidate with the biggest name or a former status record, but the candidate who is right on the issues of ending a foreign policy of interventionism, ending the Federal Reserve System, restoring value-bound currency, of ending the drug war. All these things that we've seen now being talked about in the mainstream for, thank goodness, for the first time in a long time. If we nominate a candidate who doesn't appeal to these masses, who have in mass been responding to Ron Paul's message, then we can expect to not be able to compete as well as we could have. And so that's my goal. My goal is to win the presidency by giving the awakening body politic a candidate that they can support on these key issues.
The next question is, I would like to see be their vice presidential candidate, and also anyone that they would consider asking to be in their cabinet if elected. We will begin with Mr. Johnson.
Well, with regard to vice president, and I hope to have this problem, but with regard to vice president, somebody with a high profile, somebody that might have a lot of money to be able to contribute to the campaign, but most of all, somebody that can articulate libertarian ideals and beliefs. That would be the most important part of all. With regard to cabinet positions, I've run for 2 political offices in my life, this being my 3rd. Governor of New Mexico, re-election as governor of New Mexico. All of my cabinet posts were basically apply, and we're going to go through an interview process, and we're going to pick the best and brightest. Now, in that process, the notion was if you're completely successful at your job, you won't have a job. That's first and foremost. So that would go unchanged, and I think people saw that, and it really resonated.
Mr. Scott Keller.
In terms of vice presidential candidate, I think that one, anybody that's on the stage would probably be on the short list. But I believe that this needs to go through a process as well, just like Gary was just saying. I believe that we need to start a process of asking people to apply and asking people that, whether they're high profile or not, that they have the ability to answer these types of questions, be able to present a libertarian point of view, be able to present solutions, and understand the issues. Because if for some reason the person who gets elected to the White House gets killed, then that person steps in. In terms of cabinet members, I agree wholeheartedly with what Gary just said.
Mr. Wright.
Well, this is one of the things I like about the Libertarian Party. I'm different, so I like being in the party that's different. You know, we don't get to choose who our VP is going to be like the other campaigns do. We trust the delegates at our national convention to pair 2 people together to send a proper libertarian message to the American people during the election cycle. I'm comfortable with that. My short list is anybody that's a true libertarian. All I would ask the delegates, if you want me to be the president, is give me a true libertarian as a vice president, and we will make things happen in this country. Cabinet positions, I hadn't really gone this far in my thinking because I try to stay out of fantasy land as much as possible. But, you know, my campaign manager, Thomas Hill, and I were speaking about this earlier. I kind of like the idea of Judge Napolitano as my attorney general. Ron Hall will make a pretty good bed chair. I'm sure I can think of a few others here.
Mr. Still.
Well, I'd go for Carl Denninger as Secretary of Treasury. He runs the largest economics blog in the world. It's called Market Ticker. He gets something like 300,000 individual views per month. I'd go for Lee Reitz for Secretary of Defense. Judge Napolitano for Attorney General, and I wouldn't go for Ron Paul for head of the Fed just because I don't think we need the Fed. Ron Paul
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Well, I hope to have this problem as well, and I agree with Mr. Wright completely that we ought to be trusting this to our delegates and just asking that you all not really put the weight on who's got a big name or who's somehow more popular than somebody else. We ought to be focusing on one of those a complementary candidate that can help spread this message of liberty and freedom, and not get up there on the debate stage with Mr. Biden or in the debate and give an unconstitutional or unlibertarian answer that we then have to apologize for. We don't need that. And so if I was able to look out there and tell the delegates or ask the delegates for who I would like, I think Texas is going to be critical to winning this presidential race. So I would definitely look over here at Ms. Kathy Glass, that did such a good job representing you all in the governor's race, and for vice president, and any one of up here also for vice president or for any of the cabinet positions.
Thank you. Mr. Pierce.
As to the cabinet members, I would seek applications for people, and the applications would be considered on how much they can show me that the position is not needed, or what particular activity would be needed. So let them preside over what really realistically is left. Take away the whole Office of Education, Department of Agriculture, we have a lot of problems there, Department of Energy, the Homeland Security, but I think every agency has to be re-examined and do it by somebody who knows what they're doing and really do a line item cut on that. As the vice presidential candidate, the convention will decide that, and we obviously need a libertarian, but I think somebody who's going to sell how libertarian works to the public so that they will vote for the libertarian candidate.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to assume that you have won the nomination and you are representing the Libertarian Party. You have an opportunity to speak to a huge group of independent, undecided voters. You will have the opportunity to persuade them to cast their vote for the Libertarian Party for president and address their fear of, quote, wasting their vote. We'll give you a chance to do that right now, and we're going to start with Mr. Kelly.
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer this interesting question. That mentality has been going on for a long time, about wasting votes, thinking that wasting votes is going to happen just because you voted for the person that you believed in voting for. I think that what we need to do is just simply stick to our principles. And we present, as several of us have been saying since this debate started, that if we present our views in a way that people can understand and they can realize that the government will be taken out of their lives without hurting them, then I believe that we will not only prevent wasting the vote, but we will actually win things.
Mr. Wright.
Well, I'll begin by telling this large group of people that the only wasted vote is a vote that's not cast. And there's plenty of votes cast every year. Democrats and Republicans are hating themselves all the time because of the vote that they cast. And if they tell us if we vote for you, it's a wasted vote. It just don't make any sense to me. But these undecided voters, these unaffiliated voters, this is our constituency, folks. We're not ever going to achieve electoral success by convincing enough Democrats and Republicans to vote for us. We need to go after the 50% of the American people that don't vote, that voted before and gave up, and it ain't because they're stupid, and it ain't because they don't care, it's because they're smart, and they know if I go and vote, I'm going to get the same thing no matter who I vote for, so why bother? This is why you bother, folks, the Libertarian Party. We're giving you a reason to bother. That's why I started the Million Vote March. I want all of you to try to remember, go to millionvotemarch.com. This is an effort for us to get 1 million votes for the Libertarian presidential candidate, no matter who it is. If you've never voted before, if you voted before and you quit, come back one more time. There's got to be at least 1 million people out there that want to say, stop the killing, stop the spending, stop the printing of bad money.
I love Lee, but this is, Lee, we don't print money. We borrow every single dollar in existence.
Well, stop that too.
Republicans and Democrats are both in the pocket of the financial community. The top 12 contributors to Obama's campaign are the top 12 banks. 5 of the 6 top contributors to Romney's campaign are the big banks. You need someone who will pound on the table day and night about this economic issue and say, stop the looting, let's start prosecuting, and return the money power back to we, the people of the United States. You know, it's like the choice between Republican and Democrat is like asking someone, are you voting for Lucifer or Satan today?
I'd say that the real waste of a constituent's vote out there is to continue voting in a manner that we've seen time and time again hasn't worked for decades and decades and decades now. The body politic has been asked to swing the pendulum to the left and to the right, and that doing so would change things. But what have we seen? We've just seen more and more progressive socialism that comes out of both of the other two major parties. I say other two major parties because we are a major party. We are the third largest party in the nation, and we should act like it. And so I would say that that's the real waste of your vote, is if you think you can cast it for somebody with a D or R by their name after they've proven time and time again, and their parties have proven time and time again for decades now, that they are responsible for the somewhere between $15 and $100 trillion in debt. They are responsible for these interventionist foreign wars. They are responsible for the civil war on drugs. They are responsible for all these things. And the true non-waste of your vote is to vote for a candidate and vote for a party who has not been in on any of that.
Mr. Pearson, would you please tell us?
Yes, I'll try to speak up. And the issue is, how can we deal with the fear that a voter would be wasting his vote? Now, I've convinced thousands of people to vote for me as a Libertarian candidate for president, and they never raise that issue at all. But what I've been telling them is that the Libertarian Party, through me, will show how, and we will create jobs, and the public will have prosperity. That the jobs and the prosperity are there, but we've got to deregulate small business so that we can provide those jobs. Because remember, the military, we don't want those jobs. The government, we don't want those jobs, and the big business has been sending the jobs overseas. All you have left is me, the representative of small business. You've got to free me up and allow me to create these jobs. The public realizes that, sell them on that, and you'll get their vote and we'll win the election.
I think the Libertarian Party embraces the philosophy of the majority of Americans. And that's the notion of being fiscally conservative and socially tolerant. So given that most people have this philosophy, let's identify the problems. We're bankrupt. Let's identify the solutions. We need to slash spending. And then you have to have a resume to suggest that you would actually doggedly pursue the problems and the solutions that go along with those problems. I think I've got that resume. Waste of vote? I guarantee you that a vote for either one of the old party candidates, and that's excluding Ron Paul in case he's the Republican nominee, which I don't think is going to be the case. But waste your vote, a vote for either of the two old parties is a guarantee that government 4 years from now will be bigger and more intrusive.
Now you're going to be interviewed by the media. And we're going to begin this question with Mr. Wrights. This is Wolf Blitzer at CNN. And you know what? There are a lot of people out there who don't have a job. This economy is horrible, and everyone has an answer to how to help this and help people get jobs. I want to hear what your answer is to that.
Well, that's a good question. And I found through research that the best way that the President of the United States can create jobs is start firing people. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's true. Now, Dr. Ruart's done the research. It's outlined in her wonderful book, Healing Our World. For every bureaucrat, for every regulator that loses their job, 150 private sector jobs are created. So I'm just going to see how many private sector jobs I create. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired. Otherwise, the only thing the president can do to create jobs is to get government out of the way. The president's job is not to create jobs. My job as president is going to be putting as many bureaucrats out of work as I can. So my mission is to raise the unemployment in the District of Columbia quite a bit.
If you bring that back up, it would help with the recording.
This is the microphone, it's a line.
That's your mic.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I thought it was too, but.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Steele.
Okay, well, sorry to sound like a broken record, but without monetary reform, we have no chance of successfully bringing jobs back to this country. Do you know how much the trade deficit is? Does anyone know what last month's trade deficit was? $48 billion in a month. That's $500 billion per year. That's a hole in the bottom of the bathtub continuously draining. Does anybody know what the interest payments alone on the national debt are per annum this year? Another $500 billion. And according to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, by 2020, that will exceed $1 trillion. This is a totally unsustainable path. We can't have $1.5 trillion off the bottom and be able to say that we're going to continue to create jobs. We have to solve those two problems right away.
Mr. Harris.
Right off, I do agree with Bill on the unsoundness of our monetary policy being a very central piece of this puzzle, and getting control of our monetary policy, restoring in Article 1, Section 8, a constitutional currency is paramount to helping us restore our economy and our jobs. But I would also respond that it is most certainly not to continue some type of stimulus program, which the President has been pushing, another $500 billion or so in stimulus. And I would just say that, if that was what was going to fix the problem, then, the $15 trillion we're already in debt, we would have nobody out of work. But clearly, we all know that this artificial, creation of money or these stimulus packages, they don't work. They don't create jobs. What does create jobs, as Mr. Pearson has pointed out, is small business. And we need to get the federal government out of the way. We need to get the federal government to stop spending money that it doesn't have. And we need to get the federal government to stop impoverishing our children, and also to reduce the regulations so that way small business can rise up and put America back to work.
I represent small business. That's all that I represent. And small business can't hire because today, since internet, it's too technical for me to hire somebody out of college. They don't know what they're doing. It doesn't help me at all if somebody comes to me as a history major. I need to have people who are trained in technology. And with the colleges and universities and high schools at the last year should be training people like that. It only costs $1,000 a year to give a good postgraduate type course, and I know because I created the paralegal field. We should train these people and we will have all the jobs in America that we want. We will be demanding that we have immigration to come in and fill the unfulfilled jobs. This is the potential, this is what we need to do, and this will solve the problem.
I started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque in 1974 and grew it to become New Mexico's largest construction employer, over 1,000 employees. Early in this presidential campaign, they came out with a report on who had the best history when it came to job creation. Well, that was me. And my response to what did I do? I didn't do anything. Government doesn't create jobs, the private sector does, but I controlled all the agencies. I appointed all the boards and commissions. In essence, I controlled all rules and regulations, and they got better on a daily basis from the standpoint of taking less time and less money to have to comply with those rules and regulations. I think enacting the fair tax, zero corporate tax, zero income tax, cost neutral over a very short amount of time, I think it's the answer when it comes to our exports. I think it's the answer when it comes to tens of millions of jobs when you have a zero corporate tax rate environment. And more than anything, all this creates is certainty, something that the President of the United States can do.
Right off the bat, I'd say I agree with Lee and Bill the most here. I believe that we need to get the monetary policy under control. We need to make sure that we get the banks out of the picture, and we need to get the federal government out of the way. Local, local, local is how we create jobs. It's not the federal government's job to create jobs. So, and in terms of taxes, I think we can get rid of taxes altogether. If we get the monetary sovereignty under control and we get the government size under control, what's the purpose of a tax? A tax basically is just taking back from the people what the government is supposed to be putting into circulation in the first place. So to me, it's theft. So that's what I would do.
I was really surprised and a little confused that I saw all of these college students carrying these big signs that said, "In the Fed, in the Fed, in the Fed," and apparently there's a book called that, "In the Fed." And I just wondered, what on earth does this mean, and is this something that you agree with? We'll begin with Mr. Still.
When I first produced the Money Masters, after the first cut, I wanted an economics professor to take a look at it and be sure I wasn't too far off. So I said, okay, I've been a reporter all my life. I knew how to get in touch with professors. He called the university press office. I said, I'm going to shoot for the moon. I'm going to go for Milton Friedman. Make a long story short, he looked at the first cut. He calls me back and says, boy, if you end the Fed and don't do anything about fractional reserve lending, you've done nothing. That's really important. It's not the Fed. The Fed is just the curtain, hiding, making it look like that the Fed, the government, is controlling the banks. The Fed is not part of the government. The Fed is part of the banks. You have the fox in control of the chicken house. It's not the Fed. It's the banks. You have to take back the monetary power from the banks. And just to correct something, Article 1, Section 8 does not refer to constitutional money. That's a prohibition only on the states. Article 1, Section 10 is what we need to look at. 2, 1.
Mr. Harris.
Very well said, Mr. Still. I agree with a lot of what he just said. And as president, I will, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I will audit the Federal Reserve first. And the reason why I say audit is because the American people have a right to know what's been going on with their monetary policy and with their money, even though, as Mr. Still pointed out, it's being done through, what is essentially private bankers. So I want to audit that first, and then that way the American people will see what's going on, and there will be a drastic call in support for then ending the Federal Reserve. We have to show them what's been going on with their money. We have to show the American people that they are getting robbed blind, and I think the way we do that is by having the Department of Justice, under the most libertarian Attorney General ever, going in and investigating the Federal Reserve, and then we will go ahead and, like I said, as president, I will end the Federal Reserve System and restore a sound monetary policy.
I'm going to take my right as a lawyer not to answer the question directly, but to give you something else that's related to it. That's the way we duck the issue. And that is that the cost of higher education, as you know, is maybe $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. But actually, that isn't the cost. I owned a school for 18 years at the postgraduate level. The cost of instruction is $1,000 a year if you have no regulation. Think of that. You deregulate higher education, and you can eliminate this major problem that precipitated this question about the students saying ending the Fed. No, you have to end the regulation of higher education.
Mr. Johnson.
I would end the Federal Reserve if given the chance, but that's Congress giving me the chance to end the Federal Reserve. What we need to do is stop printing money. If we ended the Federal Reserve tomorrow, Treasury would still print money, just like they did before they had a central bank, and just like other countries in the world print money that don't have a central bank. What we need to do is bring about full transparency to the Federal Reserve, which ending the Federal Reserve brings about. In lieu of not ending the Federal Reserve, we need to audit the Federal Reserve. We need strong U.S. dollar policies, not weak U.S. dollar policies. And when you get to the Federal Reserve's mandate, which originally was price stability, which was a strong U.S. dollar, coupled now with what I think are weak dollar policies, which is full employment, do you have us in the situation right now of zero interest rates? And why do we have zero interest rates? Because we're on the verge of a monetary collapse.
Well, I agree with that last statement. We are on the verge of a monetary collapse. But I want to ask you something. If we are of the frame of mind of auditing the Fed, who came up with the rules and the approaches for auditing in the first place? how are we going to audit these bankers if they already know how to hide everything? I agree with Bill, we need to end the Fed, we need to end fractional reserve lending, we need to get the banks out of the money-creating business. Without that, we're going to be with $30–40 trillion worth of debt before you know it. So that's it.
Right, you have the last word.
Well, I don't know about the rest of y'all. My monetary is already collapsed. So has yours. The money's worthless. Now, into the Fed is a bunch of things to say these days. Every politician that wants to get elected something's going to say it. The president can't say it because he can't do it. And I won't stand before you seeking the highest office in this land and lie to you and tell you I can do something that I can't. That is a aberration, if you will, of Congress. Only Congress can take it away. What I would do is support and lobby for repealing all legal tender laws. Return precious metals to the currency market where they belong. It wouldn't be long that the Federal Reserve would go away because nobody wants money that's worthless. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. They'd rather have hard money, something that's actually worth something. So that would be my solution.
Sean Kennedy here. You libertarians, I'm telling you, I just don't understand. You don't care about family values at all. I see you wanting to smoke dope and also let anybody who wants to marry each other, let them marry. Would you please tell me how that possibly makes sense?
Well, Mr. Kennedy, it makes sense. The founders of this republic put a lot of faith in the citizens and we the people to regulate ourselves, to be free, to live free, and to have liberty. And if we wanted to influence the life choices of our fellow citizens, to do so through the power of our example, not through the force of oppressive legislation, which does nothing but strangle freedom. Legislation is the opposite of freedom. And Mr. Kennedy, what do you suppose happens when the other side takes power? When the social conservatives are lobbying for these type of measures, but then when the other side, when the social liberals win power, and then they want to try to use the precedents that you set to then go out and, you know, force all of their social viewpoints on people. Now, you're going to be the victim of that. So I'm an advocate for stopping all that. I'm an advocate for allowing Americans to have their freedom so long as they're not infringing on someone else's life, liberty, or property. Let them be respected.
By not opposing these laws along the way, we wound up now where anything goes. You can throw people in jail forever at this moment, or even mark them for assassination. We've gone that far because we haven't laid down the rule, no, we don't want any interference at all. And even though you may not like some of the rules that would allow people to do certain things that you don't like, at least you're free not to do it. But don't start regulating people, because that slippery slope has already come, and it's very dangerous right now.
Well, this isn't a hypothetical. Sean asked me, what do you tell your kids if they want to smoke pot? Well, what I tell my kids first and foremost is that I love my kids, Sean, and I'm sure that you love your kids too. And so do you want them subject to the criminal justice system for choices that 50% of the graduating class of the year 2012 will make the decision to smoke pot? I suggest to you that they are anything but criminal. So when it comes to my own kids, Sean, I want to be as informative as I possibly can. I want to communicate to them that I love them, so that if they find themselves in a situation where they become impaired, give me a call first and foremost. I'll come pick you up, no questions asked, because I love you. And then, Sean, with regard to marriage equality, I think that it's constitutionally guaranteed. And how about the notion of social tolerance? That you and I should make decisions that only you and I should make, as long as we're not putting anyone else in harm's way.
As a father of 5, I can attest to that. I teach them the best that I can and let them make their own choices. If they make wrong choices, they learn from them and move on. It's not the federal government's job to be doing any kind of regulating, any kind of intrusive behavior into private people's lives. That's it.
Mr. Rice.
Well, first of all, Sean Hannity hoped that he looked as good. Oh. You know. Is anybody here unfamiliar with my stance on the war on drugs? I made it fairly clear. This war kills people, not the drugs. The drugs aren't killing people. The war, we've taken inexpensive plants and turned them into extravagant products for organized crime. Children are killing each other over the money they can make off the drugs. They're not killing each other over the drugs. The government has no place to tell us what we can put in our bodies. They should have learned their lesson from Prohibition in the last century. Does anybody think that George Martha Washington had a marriage license?
Well, like most of the divisive issues in this country can be answered with a really simple response, and that's a 10th Amendment issue. In other words, this type of thing the power should be deconsolidated and pushed down to the states. That's what the 10th Amendment says. Anything not specifically mentioned in the Constitution is pushed down to the states or we the people. It's a 10th Amendment issue. Let them figure out what the 10th Amendment means. What we're doing with the drug war is empowering the Mexican mafia by giving them a monopoly that makes them tens of billions of dollars every year. Eventually, this is going to come back and bite us. And just one quick response, kind of redundant, but I want everybody to understand this. We don't print money. We borrow every dollar into existence. Whoever says we print money doesn't know what they're talking about.
Now you get to be on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow here. Guns kill people. Guns kill people. Why are you in favor of people carrying around guns all the time? We're going to begin with Mr. Pearson.
I went to Pennsylvania at one of the meetings of the Libertarian Party, and several or more of the participants were wearing guns, and it scared me. You know, I'm not going to take them on. You have the freedom knowing that people are out there that can protect themselves and protect you, and you're not going to be worried as much when you have the right to carry a gun. You will have the option to carry a gun, and I believe we should have that.
Well, I don't think that constitutionally speaking, the Second Amendment could be any clearer. And I'm in the camp that believes very simply that if you outlaw guns, outlaws will have guns. As running for governor of New Mexico in 1994, what was a cutting-edge issue in 1994 was concealed carry. It wasn't as it is today. But then, in the primary, I was asked about concealed carry, and I gave my unequivocal support to concealed carry, believing that it would lead to overall less gun violence. That got me headlines for what I just thought was a common sense response to that question. I am not the guy that's going to legislate the caliber of a bullet or the number of bullets in the clip.
Well, I personally believe that guns don't kill people. People kill people. And if you take guns away from them, they'll find another way to do it. So, per the Constitution, the Second Amendment, as Gary was just saying, is not the federal government's duty or responsibility or right to come and tell us what we can and cannot do. If it's not in the Constitution, that's it.
Mr. Rice.
You know, Scott has hit on it briefly, and it's absolutely correct. Collected every gun on the face of the earth today, melted them all down, all the guns are gone. People will be killing each other tomorrow with a knife, a baseball bat, with their hands. Folks, Cain killed Abel with a rock. My point is, people do the killing. The greatest thing that we can do to defend ourselves is to arm ourselves. That is the great equalizer. I don't want to take on somebody in a hand-to-hand combat the size of Robert Butler. He's my friend, but he's going to take me down. I got my 38, he's less likely to do so. Now, in all fairness, I want y'all to know I believe in gun control. That's why I use both hands.
You stole my line. I started the NRA programs when I was in the 4th grade at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. All I'd respond and just say what I could add would be, what part of the Second Amendment's no abridgment do you not understand? I'm a complete supporter of the Second Amendment.
Each and every constitutional made to my left here is exactly correct, so rather than reiterate that, I will remember that we're talking to Rachel Maddow and her listeners, and go a little deeper and say that when I demobilized from Afghanistan here this last time in August of 2011, I did so within sight of the building where those horrific shootings took place at Fort Hood. And I remind her that that Fort Hood shooter did not go out to the rifle range where all the soldiers would have been armed to the teeth to commit his shootings. He went to an area where everybody is disarmed to do what he was doing. The school shootings that have happened, these shooters are going to places where they know that no one's armed, and that the response time will take a while, so they can kill as many people as possible. And if just one of those students at one of those colleges had been armed, they might have been able to defend themselves and the other innocents around them. And then I would add this, that even just the barest reading of the Federalist Papers will reveal that it wasn't just for our self-protection that we were given the Second Amendment. It was to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. And that's why, as your president, I will pardon every single person who's in jail for nothing more than exercising the right to keep and bear arms.
Gentlemen, you know we have a really serious problem, and that is that we know that Iran is building nuclear weapons. And what are we going to do about that, and what will you do about that as president? Mr. Johnson.
Well, let's recognize first and foremost that Iran is an unintended consequence of taking out Iraq. That was their only concern, was Saddam Hussein and Iraq, and what are they going to do to us today? Well, we take out Saddam Hussein and Iraq, and now we're dealing with Iran. Does Iran pose a military threat to the world? To my knowledge, they do not pose a military threat to the world. And if we're going to bomb Iran, we're looking at a 2-year maintenance bombing program because it's not going to thwart them from developing a nuclear warhead a little bit deeper or in a different place. And aren't we after the hearts and souls of citizens of Iran? And isn't our beef with the leadership of Iran? What's going to happen when we bomb Iran? Aren't we going to make 100 million enemies that perhaps we would not have made otherwise? As President of the United States, I would urge Israel to not bomb Iran.
Well, I agree with Gary, and I would add to that that we as the United States of America, with the Constitution we should not be sending military troops anywhere without congressional approval. And congressional approval is supposed to come from the people. So if the people are saying don't go over there, then we should not be going over there. Period.
Mr. Wright.
Well, I gotta tell you, it troubles me greatly. We have a sitting president right now who's given the honor of being bestowed with the Nobel Peace Prize. Since he was given that great honor, he proceeded to bomb 6 countries. And we're thinking about doing it again. The best way to stop a war is don't start it in the first place. Because once it gets started, you can't get it stopped. Now, what we're dealing with here really is a foreign policy issue, a foreign policy problem, a grave problem that the United States has been involved in for many years, particularly in the Middle East. We even tried to bribe countries into being at peace with each other. But what did we use for this bribery? Munitions and subsidies, guns and money. And it didn't occur to someone that we might become an incentive by using these things as our bribery for the warfare to continue, because nobody wants the money or the guns to stop. Best way to stop a war is don't start one in the first place.
I don't think I can improve on any of this. I mean, all these answers have been great. Other than to say that if we get out of Asia, then I think something happens that maybe nobody's counting on that works to our benefit, and that's there's a natural antagonism between Russia and China. If we're there bombing and trying to nation build, that antagonism cannot build. If we move out, then that antagonism starts to work again, and that works to our advantage. That's it.
As a 20-year career Army officer, I think I can speak to the American people with much viability and credibility on this issue, that an interventionist foreign policy has made us weaker. It has not made us stronger. It has spread our all-volunteer military around the world to defend everyone else's border but our own. It has ran us into massive amounts of national debt, which even the former Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Mullen admitted has become a national security issue by our debt. So this foreign policy of interventionism has got to stop, and I think I can deliver that message to the American people. But furthermore, does that mean that we have to disregard our defense? No, it does not. We can look to the example of our founding presidents, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, of peace through strength here at home and in international waters. We make sure that we stop all the foreign aid, make sure that foreign aid is not flowing into actors like Iran, so that way they can use that money that we borrowed against us. So, folks, that's what I'm saying is that we need to stop this foreign policy of interventionism, and as Mr. Wright's point out, we don't start wars, we defend this republic.
War is just another way of talking about the military-industrial complex. We talk about going to war and doing this and doing that and expanding our military, but it's just for the benefit of those people that are making munitions. They're selling munitions all over the world. They're expanding. They're making a huge fortune. They're taking it away from us, the people. The principle is no more war. So don't even start talking about what war would you enter into. You don't. You defend yourself vigorously, but don't go starting any wars.
Once again, you're on MSNBC. We were so delighted to finally have a health care program where everyone will be covered and everyone will be disease-free and have free everything. This is wonderful. And now, it looks like to me, if you're elected president, we won't have any health care at all. Would you explain what on earth you're going to do? We're going to begin with Mr. Keller.
Didn't the Supreme Court just do a lot of arguing about that being unconstitutional to begin with? And did health care actually improve for anybody? I don't think so. But my position on health care, as well as this about any of these things that are not fairly constitutionally mandated responsibilities for the federal government is to let the local level handle it and let the private sector handle it. And I just was watching something on, I think it was on CNN last night, I don't remember which channel it was, but they were comparing our healthcare system, the government-run healthcare system, and the private healthcare system, and they were showing that the treatments done in the private sector were much more cost-effective and they were more effective. People were getting cured faster and better than what the government system. So that proves that we shouldn't be going down the federal system. So that's it.
Mr. Rice.
You know, P.J. O'Rourke said that if you think healthcare is expensive now, just wait till it's free. He's wrong. The way that the government makes it free is by regulating, telling everybody what to do, which adds cost for your doctor visits, for your treatments, for everything. Let's think about government for a minute, government agencies. We're talking about a body of people that can't protect you when you're at the local mall and you're able-bodied. Why would we trust these same individuals to take care of us when we're sick and can't take care of ourselves? There is no incentive for them to do a good job. There's only incentive in them for money and making it cost as little as possible to keep them alive as long as they feel like it's necessary. Nobody should be involved in your health care decisions besides you and your doctor. Not a bureaucrat, not a politician, not an agency, not a group. Nobody. You and your doctor. That's it. Get the government out of the way and you'll be able to afford your own health care.
I just got an email about 4 days ago, and I'm so sorry I don't have that email here to quote some of the unbelievable things that are in this health care bill. I believe it's on page 252, for example, that do you know that at age 76, if Obama's health care bill holds Supreme Court scrutiny, that it will not allow payments for chemotherapy or advanced cancer treatments after age 76. This lady's shaking her head. I believe you're in the medical community, aren't you? There are things in that bill that are just unbelievable. The Obama health care bill has got to go. Actually, the way we've got it today is not incredibly bad. I mean, if you really are destitute, you're still treated in an ER. We don't have such a bad system. It definitely needs to be tweaked, but the Obama bill is just, you aren't going to believe it when you actually start feeling the effects.
I mean, who out there thinks that a glance at the last 100 years of failed progressive socialism at the federal level is somehow going to magically change with this health care bill? I mean, we've seen it time and time again. The federal government is completely incompetent to deliver individual, private, and social welfares. So if you really do care about the health care needs or the poverty needs or any of these other social needs out there, then the most obvious thing to do is to get the federal government out of it, because they've proven with more than a century of incompetence that they can't handle it. And as it applies to healthcare, just look at the VA hospitals. Look how they're run and ask yourself if you would want to be a patient there, if you would want to have to go to an all-government hospital. And I suspect that the answer for most of you is no. Now, I also agree, though, that, or I believe that as president, the president has a lot of power to stop this. Article 2 of the Constitution says that the president has to take an oath to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that's over and above regular legislation that's passed by the Congress, which is why, as president, I will not enforce Obamacare.
Mr. Pearson.
Medical care is really no more than another war on, in this case, sickness. It's just not given that name, but it's just one more war that the government has created. It's a boondoggle. Take education. 5% of the cost of going to college is really all that it costs to get the education. 19 out of $20 is spent wastedly for regulation. I think there's a great degree of that in the medical care situation. Let us give the medical situation back to the doctors, let them own their own practices instead of working for the insurance carriers. Let them own their own practice, let us have more care at the local level, and we can solve this problem locally.
promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That will detail a 43% reduction in Medicaid and Medicare. Before anybody falls off their chair with regard to a 43% reduction in either of those categories, it's important to point out that if we don't balance the federal budget, we're going to find ourselves without any health care at all. So as governor of New Mexico, I oversaw the reform of Medicaid in New Mexico, health care to the poor, changed it from a fee-for-service model to a managed care model, set up better health care networks, saved hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe at the time that if the federal government were to have block granted the state of New Mexico 43% less money, done away with all the strings and the mandates, that I could have effectively overseen the delivery of health care to the poor in New Mexico. I think the same model applies to Medicare. 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice. The federal government has to give it up to the states.
During the Republican debates, Congressman Ron Paul called for an end to the income tax, and he said he would replace it with nothing. I'm wondering if you agree with that as your tax policy, and if you would explain what your tax policy would be if you were president. We're going to begin with Mr. Wright.
Tax policy. My tax policy would be stop it everywhere we can. Of course, now this is another touchy area for the president, and I know Sharon's not trying to fool us, but they do get these kind of questions. And then the guy who's over the president answers it like he can do something about it. Well, the president can't do anything about your taxes. He can't lower them, he can't raise them, he can't cut them, he can't do away with them. That's what Congress is for, unfortunately. But what a president can do is hold Congress responsible for their spending and for how they use the money that they steal from us by some tax or whatever. This whole concept that somehow just a magic tax is going to, help us in our economy and whatnot. It doesn't work that way. You're removing wealth from the people who are the economy. When you tax something, we need tax breaks, and we need to slash the spending, stop the spending that we're doing. That would be my tax policy.
Mr. Steele.
It's interesting. Did you know that at the start of the 1900s that the U.S. government was funded 90% by just two types of taxes? That's tariffs and excise taxes. Of course, an excise tax would be what we are talking about, a consumption tax today. I haven't seen this figure from Dr. Paul that he can completely eliminate the income tax unless he's talking about completely replacing it with a consumption tax. And of course, that's what I do.
You know, I didn't think I'd see the moment come when I had something to disagree with Mr. Wright's on, but it has arrived. Sorry, Lee. I do think that the president can stop the income tax, and I think the president can do it by refusing to collect it. The president does not have to make himself party to slavery upon we the people, because that's what it is. When the government comes and takes your personal labor, okay, they're saying that they own you and they can take that labor away from you. And that's the very definition of slavery. And the president, under Article 2 of the Constitution, does not have to make himself party to that. He could say that I'm not going to collect the personal income tax, so Congress, you need to give me something that's constitutional and that does not promulgate slavery. And as president, that's exactly what I will do.
Mr. Pearson.
The first step is to simplify the code and get rid of all the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of giveaway that are contained in the code. Simplify it, reduce the costs of government so that the money that's needed is less. You've got to actually change things, I think, with campaign financing reform. Just allow candidates who run for office to have free franking privilege, postage, and access to the broadcast media. And if we allow that, we won't need to raise money, and we will have reform because we will have reformed people being voted into office. I think that's our solution.
Mr. Johnson.
as governor of New Mexico, not one penny of tax went up over 8 years. Not 1 cent. That had never happened before. And that included a cigarette tax, but I made a promise that not 1 penny of tax would be increased. The key here is to slash spending, something that has never happened before. I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress, a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending. I also promise to advocate on the part of, really, what I'm supporting is a consumption tax. I think it's fair. It's revenue neutral. I'm embracing the fair tax because I think they have millions of followers, and for all of the problems associated with a consumption tax, they've addressed those issues. It would be terrific if we got to be able to debate the merits of a fair tax. But ideally, there is no tax. I just think if you implement one federal tax, doing away with the income tax, corporate tax, tax withholding, the IRS, that goes down the road a long way to identifying one federal tax that if it gets raised, we become outraged. The pressure is going to be to reduce it.
This is one of my favorite topics. I say get rid of taxes altogether. I believe that we can do it. We absolutely can do it. If we follow what Bill was saying earlier about getting the monetary policy right, getting rid of the Federal Reserve, getting the bankers out of the system, getting the distribution of new cash right, and getting that out of the hands of the bankers, then we can address what taxes really are, as I said earlier, theft, which is if the Congress is doing its job and creating the money, regulating it, of course, making sure there's not too much because we don't want inflation, that kind of thing. But if the government is doing what the Constitution says for it to do, then it won't need taxation to fund its operations. And then if we bring into play what these other guys were saying about reducing the spending out of the federal government and down to the local level, then the whole problem is resolved. No taxes.
Before we have our closing statements, I'd like for everyone to just answer the question, do you think these guys did a good job of answering the question? Answering questions every night on CNN and MSNBC and Fox and so forth. We're now going to give each gentleman 3 minutes to give a closing statement, and we will begin with Mr. Steele.
My thanks to the Tarrant County LP for putting this very elaborate meeting together. I know how much work it is to pull off. So how do we fix our economy? Monetary reform consists of 2 great pillars. Completely eliminating the ability of governments to borrow is number 1. Number 2, eliminate the ability of the biggest banks to control the quantity of money in the system. This is known as fractional reserve lending. The money power must be returned to the people to whom it properly belongs. The problem is that right now, every dollar in your pocket is created as an interest-bearing debt by bankers and not the government. The government does not print money. The only thing that the government does print or coin are coins. That's actually the only debt-free money in existence. Also, letting the so-called free market fix this has not worked. The big banks have been completely without effective regulations in the past decade. It hasn't worked. The money power is the most awesome and important power of any sovereign nation. We, the people, have to take that back. Now, I'm not talking about giving Congress the power to print money without restriction. Every monetary reformer knows that that will only result in massive overspending before every election as politicians try to appease their local constituencies. We say give control over the quantity of the federal money to a monetary authority composed of members of each of the 50 states, as per the 10th Amendment. But imagine this world, one in which a nation could not borrow. Then, if politicians wanted to spend, they would have to suffer the negative political consequences by raising taxes immediately. How much do you think they'd be overspending then? Not very much. Finally, Mr. Johnson will be the nominee this year, so I can no longer ask my supporters to donate money, and I myself probably will not be at the convention in Las Vegas. Why can't I support Mr. Johnson? First, he has said repeatedly that he believes in government borrowing. His quote is, "Borrowing is good, printing is bad." He doesn't understand that all money comes from debt. Only during quantitative easing does money actually come into the system debt-free. Furthermore, I believe in prosecuting the people who created the bubble. I would order my Justice Department on day one to start the prosecutions at the top. Those who stole the most money would be the first indicted. This issue would be a winner with the American people, and it is the only issue that will be a winner with the American people. The nominee seems to be an apologist for the big banks. His quote was, "They didn't commit any crimes, they just made some bad decisions." I would point out that the crimes are well documented by Professor Janet Tabacoli in her new book, and they continue to this day.
Mr. Harris.
Well, thank you to the Texas Libertarian Party, and thank all of you for coming out to hear us debate today. I would like to thank my fellow candidates for sharing the stage with me. It's been an honor. It really has been an honor to share the stage with you and to share this campaign trail with each and every one of you. And I would also like to end by asking for all of you for your support. You know, these campaigns, it takes a lot of support, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of money to get around and do what we've got to do. And I'd like to ask you all to visit my website, rjharris2012.com. We have a fundraiser that's going on for April 15th, and I'd like to ask as many of you as possible to participate in that so that we can go to the convention. And just to also add this and say, you know, we have to nominate a candidate who is right on the message, on each and every point. You know, Ron Paul has been fighting out there for years and years and years and years. And it's never mattered to us whether or not we thought he was going to win. What mattered is that he was right on the message, and that he spoke the truth to power, and that he said, we're fed up with the infringements of our liberty, and we're not going to take it anymore. And we all rallied around behind that. Well, unfortunately, it looks like Dr. Paul will not win the GOP nomination. And folks, if this party, if our party does not nominate a candidate who is right on each and every one of these issues, who is right on ending the interventionist foreign policy, who is right on ending the Federal Reserve, who is right on ending the drug war, on all these different things that we've mentioned here today, then we can expect not to have the Liberty Movement support for our eventual nominee. So folks, please do not be just brought in to make your decision on who's got the bigger name or the bigger former office. Please make your decision on who has been right on this message, who has been right on these issues, and who can carry this banner of liberty forward for each and every one of us, and who can go on these on the television and go on the debate stage with the other two eventual nominees and not apologize for a message. Convince the American people of the rightness of the liberty message, and rather than have to couch it for another group or to try to say, okay, well, it's not right in this situation, whatever, we ought to be saying to the American people, no, we have the best message, and here's why. And I think that you've seen an opportunity, you've seen our candidates up here doing that today. And so that's what I would like to ask you in closing to do with your votes, is don't think, you know, the question came earlier about throwing away your vote. Well, that doesn't just apply in the general election, it's also going to apply here. If you vote for the candidate who is right on all these issues, who you know in your heart, who you have said to yourself is right on these core principled issues, that is not a wasted vote, because you will then put up the best candidate and the best vice presidential candidate to take on the socialists from the other two larger parties and win over the American people to the rightness of our ideals and give us a mandate to govern moving forward and not just to continue the status quo.
Mr. Pearson.
The public wants action, and you have to be on message with the public, I think. Having 50 different issues that we prevail in over everyone else isn't being on message. It may be the message that we have over the years, but we have people now who are hurting. They're losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, they don't have opportunity, the educational costs are just out of sight, they have way behind in student loans, their parents mortgage their property to pay student loans, they can't pay them now. The public is hurting and wants results. They're not going to listen, I think, to the core libertarian issues as being able to pull them out of their misery. I think we have to show them exactly how libertarian values can create jobs privately at no cost to the government by having the first 3 employees be free of regulation. You'll create 20 million high-paying jobs, around 1,000 to 2,000 a week as number 2 in a small business. The public needs that, but we need people to be trained to accept that kind of employment. We have to deregulate higher education to allow small business to set up the training programs nationwide to train people so they can go into these jobs. The other people that traditionally hire don't hire anymore, or we don't want them to hire anymore. It's on us in small business to create the employment that will actually reduce, it'll create opportunities, create jobs, and allow people to keep their homes. The message on foreclosures is that if a person proves he can't keep his home and can't afford it, and that the home is going to be sold at foreclosure, if they can demonstrate that they can afford to pay the mortgage at that reduced value of the property at the present interest rate, why shouldn't they be allowed to stay in the property if the property is just going to be sold to the neighbor across the street? It's not giving him anything, he's just giving the same thing and should have the right, a first option to remain in the property. So the public wants to hear solutions. I have these solutions and I've developed them, and this is what will sell. If you want to win the election, sell the public on these values that libertarian principles have for them.
Mr. Johnson.
I don't view this afternoon so much as a debate, as a job interview, and I really want you all to know that I would love to be the nominee of this party. I would love to have this job. I think that governing, first and foremost, should be constitutionally based. I think that we need to balance the federal budget, and that means slashing spending. It means ending the wars, the drug wars, the conflicts that we are currently engaged in. As governor of New Mexico, good government was easy. It wasn't hard. And that started with looking at issues first and politics last. As an athlete, what I have learned as an athlete is you've got to enjoy the journey. Life is a journey, it's not a destination. I love the hard work. I love that part of it. I don't look to the end result, I look to working hard as governor of New Mexico, taking on these issues, debating, discussing, not shying away from the rightness of the issue. The Libertarian Party candidate is going to be the only candidate that's going to be talking about gun rights and gay rights in the same sentence. The Libertarian candidate for president is the only candidate that's going to be talking about slashing welfare spending and slashing warfare spending in the same sentence. This is an opportunity right now to change the world. Who is ultimately responsible for the poll done in October that had 50% of Americans supporting legalization of marijuana? Ultimately, the organization responsible for that is the Libertarian Party. And when you go back 40 years, people recognize that. And right now there's going to be a refocus on that. There's going to be a refocus on who's really talking about the issues and the solutions that go along with the problems that we face. And they're also going to be looking for somebody who has a resume that actually suggests that they would doggedly pursue the agenda that they put forward. Thank you all very much for your activism over the years. It's made a difference. I applaud you. Continue that activism. Thank you very much.
Mr. Keller.
First off, thank you to the leadership of the local party that you were able to put this event together and that you invited me down here from Colorado. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure getting a chance to talk about the issues and meet these guys again. And one of the things that I want to say real quick is that, yeah, you have some options here. But I think that we need to come together as a group. Everybody up here has some good ideas. Everybody. I don't think that there's a single person up here that didn't have some. And I find agreement with a lot of things that everybody said up here. I'm believing that you probably did too. And it's going to be hard to choose one particular person because if you choose one, then you're leaving out some of the other
items that somebody else was talking about, but maybe the one that you're choosing didn't believe in. Well, we have the ability as a party to come together and rally behind that person and teach the person some ideas. Help the person understand some ideas that maybe they didn't quite understand, or maybe they didn't quite agree with what you're saying. We should have an open debate, as Gary said. We should have a debate on the fair tax. We should have a debate on the Federal Reserve. We should have a debate on individual issues where it's an open forum, so that we can get the truth about the various issues and the solutions to them and the root causes of the issues, so that we can be as one, as a party, and be able to, with a good conscience, send whoever the nominee is up to debate with Obama and with Romney and whoever else, that they are going to do not just an okay job, not just get 5% or 6% or whatever, but they'll have a chance of getting 40, 50, 60% of the vote, because they are up there giving the people ideas and answers and solutions that none of the other candidates are saying. Obama's not saying it. He's had, 4 years to do it. He hasn't said anything about it yet, something that actually makes sense that will solve anything. Romney's not saying it, and both the Republicans and the Democrats, you see it in poll after poll after poll, the rank and file Democrats and Republicans are not happy with their candidate. Why? Because they're saying the same thing over and over and over again, and suggesting that we do the same thing over and over and over again. And what's the definition of insanity? You guys all know it. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is not going to happen. With any one of the candidates up here, I believe you're going to get a different result. And if we all rally behind that candidate and mold a set of answers and solutions that we can present to the people, then we are going to be noticed in a very positive way, and we may very well win. Thank you.
Mr. Wright.
Oh yes, that collective sigh of relief, the last man speaks. Glad it's me. Because I got to hear my fine colleagues what they had to say. One little opportunity for each one of you, particularly those of you that are going to be national delegates, to have this amount of choice going into a presidential election. And know that it's a real choice. That we're not out here running and collecting our delegates, and that our national convention is just a show like the Republicans and Democrats. They already know what's going to happen before they get there. We never know what's going to happen at our conventions. Never. And that's why I feel at home. Because I feel like that's the way my life has been. I never know what's going to happen next. Thomas Hill, my campaign manager, knows exactly what I'm talking about. Man's lived in his car, out of a suitcase, since 2010. So he could run me for president. And people ask me why I do this. I do it for my family. For people like Thomas Hill, Pat Dixon, Kathy Glass, John J. Myers, people that dedicate themselves to liberty. And that's what I do. That's what I bring to this race. You can bet one thing with Lee Wrights. Every question will have a libertarian answer. Because as our friends in Arizona have already pointed out to us, there's only one answer: freedom. Every time, all the time. Of course, we don't just say freedom and then stand there and look at the dumb looks looking back at us, wondering what we mean. Can't do that, of course. That's why you've got to see today what we all have to offer. True choices with rational alternatives. Something that this country desperately needs. Talk about the 50% of people that don't vote. And they've learned the hard way. No use for them to come and vote. We can give them hope. True hope. Not hope that's talked about and then cast on the rocks as soon as he is elected president. Not promise change and then get the same thing. To be true to our words. To live the libertarian lifestyle as an example to our fellow human beings. To show them that we're not really all that different. We have families, loved ones, we bleed, we cry. We want want the same things they do. We've just figured out the government can't help us get those things. So visit my website, rights2012.com. Please go out and check out millionvotemarch.com. This is a march for everybody up here, whoever the candidate is. And always remember, stop the wars. Because you don't teach people it's wrong to kill people by killing them. You don't teach people it's wrong to bomb people by bombing them. Join me. I am not at war. But enough of us say it, but it can't happen anymore.
Who made this actually happen and run smoothly, and that's our two-timers. Would you stand up for applause here? I would also like to thank our organizer here, John Spivey, who thanked everybody else.
Much, Sharon, and I told somebody earlier this was like a writer who writes a movie and then he takes the script and hands it to the director, and then the director takes her vision and hands it to the actors, and you kind of don't know how it's actually going to all end up, but you know what, when you have a great director and you have some fantastic actors, you usually put out a really great product. So thank you very much to the candidates. Thank you so much to Sharon. Really great questions, and certainly appreciate your efforts and creativity. This is a pretty big event, and you know we've got a really nice crowd. But first of all, it's a good thing you guys showed up, because we are just chock full of national delegates here. So yes, and so our national convention in Las Vegas is going to be an event that you'll definitely want to attend. I would like to remind the delegates here that April 10th is the deadline to make sure that you have your rooms. So please go to lp.org and you can click onto the website to make sure that you've got your rooms and that you're in. So also, after that, thank you to our wonderful election rules here in Texas, our state convention actually occurs after the national convention, and that is going to be an awesome, awesome event. And I'd like to ask our chair, Pat Dixon, to come up and just tell a little bit about what's going to be happening there. It's really exciting.
Thank you. In 2 months, one of these people will be back as the nominee for the Libertarian Party. We want you back with us. It's going to be here in Fort Worth. So for all the people that are here, there's some flyers that were distributed that may be on your seats if people are watching over the internet or whatever. We want you here in Fort Worth, June 8th through 10th. We are building up our list of speakers. One of them will be Tom Woods, who many of you know. There's a website on that flyer. Keep posted on that website because we're going to update that over time. But we want you back with us. Thank you for being here today.